let's go into this with we were talking about, and Warren's got is Warren is, had a bump. I mean, she's going through a little bit of a surge right now, and it's been interesting because to a large extent, the Biden people in particular seem to be very, very nervous about her. I don't get the sense that Bernie's people are as nervous about her at this point. I think the idea is that they want, I think, the election to be between two people to the left of Joe Biden, frankly. Right. But Biden definitely seems worried about it. His people announced the other day that they're going to be talking about her corporate the payments, and which now you've worked in a bunch of campaigns, you've run for office. Do you communicate a couple of days beforehand to your opponent, what you're going to be attacking them on? Is that?
Oh, no. No, although I wish they probably wished so.
Right. Well, I mean, what is Biden doing there? Is he trying to is it just a way to sort of get that idea out there?
My only thought is maybe they were preventing an attack. There was something coming out from Warren's team, and it was like a little bit of a threat that, oh, honey, you're not, honey.
Right.
Speaking in Biden voice, come on, guys. That's how he talks.
Of course, actually.
That's probably how he thinks.
It's exactly how he thinks.
I mean, he said kid to Kamala Harris.
Right.
So, that be careful, we have stuff too. I mean, everybody has stuff on each other, and they don't always use it, and oftentimes they wait until the perfect moment, and, there's also false information they can put out there, but I don't know if the corporate base, I mean, the attack that they said that they were going to use is that, we're going to expose that you used to work for corporations or something like that, your corporate employees, which I don't know if that's a substantial, I mean, would you attack somebody? It depends on what they did, of course, if they represented corporations for fraud.
If I was Joe Biden, I wouldn't use that attack because that's part of probably the allure that I project to some of my voters anyways. I have a feeling it may be part of a sort of a broader narrative to say that she's disingenuous in some fashion. Yeah. But here's Jim Cramer on CNBC, and then we'll get a chance to pick up more on this. Here's Jim Cramer on CNBC. They're already starting on CNBC to talk about the doom and gloom if the Democrats win. In particular, Elizabeth Warren. And they're talking about Wells Fargo. Just a reminder, folks. Wells Fargo, in addition to all the stuff involved in the companies that they bought that were involved in the sort of the massive fraud that existed in foreclosures and the run up to the 2008 financial crisis, Wells Fargo, since that time, has had literally thousands of their own employees place people. I don't even know how to express this. You go in, you get a bank account. They take your info and, without you knowing it, sell you other products that the bank is selling, and you get billed for it. And if you're lucky, you notice. If you're not lucky, you don't. And Wells Fargo was just like, maybe we were a little bit over ambitious with our workers, guilty, but we didn't tell them to do this. One would think that you would have controls in there that you need maybe a signature or something. But here is Jim Cramer talking about how scared they are if Elizabeth Warren gets in.
But how is it possible that this company cannot find a CEO? I mean, are they worried about Elizabeth Warren attacking that? She or he would be.
Of course they are, and of course that person is. Why wouldn't they be?
I don't know.
If she becomes president, what do you think is going to happen to the banks?
Pause it. Let me just be clear on what happened here. Jim Cramer is making a joke.
Yeah.
Right? He's making a joke about why can't Wells Fargo find a CEO? Now, I would guess it's probably because somebody's going I don't want to go in there because every other day it seems like they find massive amounts of criminality in the company, and I don't want to be overseeing that type of stuff.
Or be held accountable for that.
Exactly.
Brought into courts.
And so Cramer doesn't know how to respond when this guy goes, yeah, that is why they're afraid of... Go ahead.
If she becomes president, what do you think is going to happen to the banks?
Well, it's not it would be a suboptimal situation for the banks.
You think Elizabeth Warren pushes banks into it? Well, they're already down 20% from the highs, but
yeah, I just think that there were these hearings in the 30s where they brought rich people in front of Congress and just kind of trashed them. It was effective.
Well, it's about 20 years later, we had the least discrepancy in incomes in the 50s and 60s, all right?
I don't know what's going to happen. Look, I've got to tell you, when you get off the desk and you talk to executives, they're more fearful of her winning. I mean, I've never heard anybody say, look, she's got to be stopped. She's got to be stopped. I don't know. She's very, she keeps going up in the polls.
She's raised a ton of money.
She's going to win Iowa, I believe. She's a very compelling figure on the stump.
By the way, I hear it too, and it's another reason why companies are being implored to do things now. If you want to get something done,
you really think
M&A or anything, think about doing it soon, because come early to mid 2020, if Elizabeth Warren's rolling along, everybody's going to be like, that's it.
So you're hearing it too?
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
and I'll have what he's having.
Well, I mean, if I'm Elizabeth Warren, I cut that into an ad for me.
Trump's friend, Jim Cramer,
yeah,
nonetheless.
Is Cramer friends with Trump?
He is always praising him and tweets.
It's very strange.
What
is
I don't
anyone
understand
really
here
friends
is,
with Trump?
Yeah, if they're on TV, they're friends with Trump. This is NBC. NBC has a long relationship with Trump in some way or form, and right. I find it. I'm not trying to be conspiratorial, but there's like a lot of Warren praising on NBC. And I watched, unfortunately, all weekend, I watched NBC and barely heard Bernie's name. Wouldn't they also be scared of Bernie?
One would think that they would be scared of Bernie, but Bernie has always been ignored in this way. I mean, I've told this story many times, but I got a call in the run-up of 2016 election in the spring of 2015 from a reporter from Politico who was doing a piece on Martin O'Malley. And he says to me, he calls and he says, look, I'm doing this piece on Martin O'Malley. Martin O'Malley wants to know how he can get progressives, how he can, compete with Elizabeth Warren for progressives. And I was like, Elizabeth Warren's not running for election. Bernie Sanders is. He's got to worry about Bernie Sanders. And the guy just laughed.
Oh, but it's Politico. So
well, but the point is, I think, at CNBC, they have the same attitude.
Yeah.
Like it's completely, and probably NBC, broadly speaking. It is unfathomable to them.
Is it, or is it a direction? I mean, the way these networks, we've both worked for networks and there is actual editorial direction given that's passed down. Like, we're going to cover this story. We're not covering this story. We're going to talk about these people. There's the graphics. I mean, I think some of it is a little bit of like inner, establishment beltway mentality. But then I think some of it is actually very intentional. I would be surprised if there were directives that were specifically, we're going to not cover Bernie Sanders, whatnot. I think it's just, honestly, the vast majority of those people there just think in one way. That's why they're there. That if they thought a different way, they just wouldn't get through the hiring process. Just because it's like, I don't want that freak in here. And so I just think it just doesn't even they just don't take him seriously. Right.
Even now, after you look at the entire campaign sort of organized around his issue sets, they still don't take him seriously. And I think that's probably not a bad place for Bernie to be in at this point in the race, right? I mean, because the difference between 2020 and 2016 at this juncture is that Bernie takes his chances more seriously. And he did not in when we were in 2015, I guess it would have been the equivalent. And in September 2015, I don't think Bernie Sanders thought I'm in this race to win. I think he's like, I'm in this race to make it clear about income inequality and money that has corrupted our political process. And I don't think he had a real agenda to win until 5 months later, 4 months later. And that was a little bit too late. I think that's the big difference right now, is that maybe he's being overlooked by the national media. That's fine, because they're building something on the ground, I would think.
Oh, yeah. And my hope is that there's a feedback effect there because people want to pick a winner. People don't want to be wasting their time. So hopefully the more Bernie thinks he can win, the more other people will, and the more people will volunteer and do the whole not me, us thing to make sure there's actually a grassroots movement behind him.
Speaking